So today we're going to walk through the Watershed Rapid Assessment Program to examine regional watershed data summary capabilities. Specifically, this is for helping Colorado designated planning agencies, or DPAs, assist in the development of their 208 plans. The RAP tool allows you to look at a number of different spatial scales and areas of interest across a number of different data sets. The ones of interest today that we're going to walk through include current and forecasted population, current and projected changes in land use, stormwater extent, location of wastewater treatment facilities, although we have another guide like this specific to wastewater treatment plants, as well as an in-depth look at some of the water quality data and impairments and classifications that you can get out of the RAP tool. To begin, if you go to cphe-rap.erams.com, you're going to arrive at our Catena Analytics tool for the RAP dashboard, the Watershed Rapid Assessment Program. This gives you all sorts of resources and data sets. If you have any questions, the button at the top will allow you to download a user's manual, which includes a step-by-step of how to this tool, as well as metadata associated with each of the data sets that's in this tool. Just a brief overview. The left dashboard is kind of the steps of the tool. You can go to the landing page and read what RAP is. You can specify your area of interest, the data sets you're interested in, and then peruse some of the data. The right dashboard is kind of your standard GIS interface. So this is where you can upload your own areas of interest. You can preload some of the spatial layers that are already built into the Catena tools. You can change your base map. You want satellite imagery, you want a topography map, shaded relief, that kind of stuff. And then zoom extent tools. So if I want to zoom in to, say, the city of Fort Collins, I can do something simple like type in Fort Collins, and I'll zoom into city of Fort Collins. The RAP tool starts off with by basically asking you to define your area of interest. There are a number of different ways to do this. You can do something like draw it on the map in line buffer, a point buffer. You can draw a rectangle. You can draw a custom polygon. You can upload your own ArcGIS shapefile or GeoJSON file, or you can request to use something like a known boundary, right? So I want to look at a particular county. I want to look at a particular watershed from USGS, an 8-digit watershed, a 12-digit watershed. You can pick one of those, and those lists are going to be dynamic to where you're zoomed to. So if you change where you're located, right, if you pan across on the map and pick a new location, you're going to need to hit this refresh button so that it'll reset the list of potential boundaries to where you're zoomed to. I'm going to pick the Huck 10 in Fort Collins, the Horsetooth Reservoir, Cache La Poudre Huck 10 watershed. You'll notice this is a wedge of the Cache La Poudre River just flowing through town, plus some of the contributing areas. When you click Set Boundary, that's going to auto-advance you to the next step of the RAP tool. And this basically includes where you get to pick your data summaries. There's a number of different data summaries available. We're only going to handle 4 or 5 of them in today's video, but feel free to peruse and examine yourself. All of these have metadata associated with them, right? So if you want to figure out where we're getting the PRISM data set, you can click on the data info button next to any one of these categories, and it'll list each of the topics, each of the data topics within it. If you click any one of these, it's going to go hit the live web services data sets for that particular data type, and then summarize them for your area of interest. So you can go ahead and just do something like, I want to look for stream stations in this location. I want to look at my land use. I want to go look at my population. I want to go look at my wastewater treatment plants in urban areas, right? So those are the kind of the topics that we're looking at. And as those data sets are fetched and queried live, they're going to come back and you're going to get a nice little summary. So you notice the MS4 areas, you got a nice map of the urbanized areas in Fort Collins, Colorado, clipped to your boundary, right? So I'm only looking at this jagged edge through town of my Huck 10. The map will reset back out to the entire zoom extent of the boundary every time a new data set comes through. So that was another data set, probably land use, population, wastewater treatment plants, one of those coming through and just resetting that. So that's pretty normal. If you click on any one of these, you can download those tools, right? So you can download the raw data set associated with it. If I want to go look at the wastewater treatment plants, I'll get a nice summary in the map of where they're located. You'll notice these points squish over top of each other when you zoom out, so you'll have fewer points the further you zoom out. As you zoom in, you'll not notice all the different sub points. Every one of those is listed in this table down here. If you want to see more of the bottom panel for any one of these data sets, there's a set of arrows over here. If you click the top one, it'll maximize that table and you can see the whole list of, in this case, wastewater treatment plants. You can download that as a CSV file plus the map. If you click the download button, that'll pop up and give you a nice little download of that raw data set. You can also continue just perusing around on the map. Hop back real quick. Walking through each of the data sets, though, now that you've had a little bit of an overview of the RAP tool, we'll start over on the urban growth boundaries. I think it's one of the middle bullets in the DPA guide. It provides urban area extents for the city of Fort Collins. Well, when you get your download, you'll get a nice little zip file. It'll pop up in a window like this. If you do not get a pop-up, look in the right corner of your web browser. There'll probably be a little red X that says we blocked the pop-up for this website. You'll need to go in and click that you want to allow pop-ups from this website in order to download the files. When you download this, it's going to be a zip file that contains both the data sets. Right, so I have my wastewater treatment plants data set. So this is basically the shape file of the wastewater treatment plants and the CSV associated with it from the interface, as well as a copy of the maps that get generated by this tool. So I have a map of every data set that I've picked, right? So if I want to look at my my urban growth boundaries map, if I want to look at my land use map, I have all of those summarized in this download. So you can take those and insert them into your own reports, into your own guides, anything like that. Starting kind of left to right, we'll come back to stream monitoring stations. If you want to look at land use, you'll notice that this one gives you a nice map of land use type. In our case, we picked the NLCD land use type, so you have a nice little summary over here of all the different classifications. These graphs are interactive, so you'll notice that as you hover over a particular wedge, you get a nice summary of that category. You can turn them on and off, right? You can expand them out, you can emphasize. These are all nice for exports. If you want to take one of these and use it, you can download that graph as an image, PNG, JPEG, PDF, SVG is a vector graphic, or the raw data to graph it in your own graph package. You can download it as a CSV file, you can download it as an Excel file, and you can get that same content out in your own version to use offline outside of the tool. Again, if you hit that download button, you'll get this map and this pie chart for land use. Looking at the population summary tab, you'll see both the spatial extent of census data. So this is direct from the US Census Bureau and their web API. So this is always up to date with whatever they've published. You'll notice that you get a map extent and a population scale bar. So you can kind of see which population's at which end of the spectrum, as aggregated dynamically by the population units within there. So there's blocks, there's block groups, there's tracts, there's county level census data. This will auto aggregate it to the appropriate spatial scale for you. If you look at the bottom here, you get a nice little chart of historic population and future population. Minimizing it and just kind of walking through it, you'll notice that you have your average 10-year census, right? So you got 2000, 2010. This is the census for Fort Collins. Again, these graphs are interactive. So you got 84,000 people in that section, 86,000 a few years later. The second data set published by Census Bureau was their American Community Survey data, which are county level population estimates. These are annual population estimates since 2005 that they've put out. So you'll notice it'll go through and include all of those. The last data set in here is a population forecast. This is from the Colorado State Demographers data set. They have county level population estimates. So based on the area weighted average of the spatial extent of a county, right? My area is 20% of Larimer County. You'll go get 20% of Larimer County's population. That gets cross-calibrated to the 2010 crossover year between American Community Survey, which is also only available at the county scale, as well as the decennial data, which has a higher spatial resolution. Those get a weighting factor just to make those populations the same in that year. And then you can look at that forecast extent as it goes out. That allows you to basically say, I want 20% of Larimer County, but a lot of it is the city of Fort Collins, which is one of the bigger municipal areas in that county. So it'll help skew the area to cross over correctly on those population projections. If you look at wastewater treatment plants, this will give you a nice little summary of their locations and some of the metadata associated with them. So this includes the name of the facility, their permit IDs, where they're at, what type of facility it is. So notice that this has a number of different facilities. You've got construction sites, you've got water supply systems, you've got sewer systems, you've got sand and gravel operations, all of those. And if available, this one will actually pull out any observed flow rates so you know, City of Fort Collins actually submitted some flow rate data to EPA for this one, so it actually has a flow rate associated with it. Again, you can download this as a table, you can download it as a shapefile and work with it offline outside of the tool. The last one, the MS4 growth boundaries. Click on that and let it load real quick. That one again shows the urban extents. This shows both urban areas and urban clusters. So urban areas is this first boundary in Fort Collins. If you download it, you'll notice in the shapefile there's an attribute for that. The urban areas are defined as the MS4 systems. The urban clusters are areas adjacent to Colorado urban areas that have the potential to become MS4 systems in the future due to expansion, typically, and urbanization in those areas. You'll notice a lot of this is the rural areas outside of town that don't necessarily have curb and gutter MS4 stormwater systems in them. So that's kind of where you have the urban areas and their growth boundaries. The last data set I want to walk you through is the stream monitoring locations. I'm going to preload this one over here. When you click on the stream monitoring location, you'll get a nice little table of all the different monitoring sites across your area. Again, this is a big table. You'll notice down here that I'm showing 3 of the 15 sites. You can toggle through those with the arrows and you can see what they have. Clicking any one of these sites, clicking the checkbox will preload the data into the tool. And you'll notice you get a nice summary of water quality data and flow data available at that site. And these are color coded just for ease of use. So you can look at things like, okay, this site does not have any flow data, right? It's red. There's no flow data available for this particular EPA site, but it does have water quality data. You'll notice that there are some orange ones. These are flagged that the data exists for this particular site in that category, but not within the period of assessment that you specified, the period of interest. So this, you have a date selector, so you can say, maybe I'm interested in 2020 through 2022, or you want to pick a different date range. You can either use the calendar dropdown to pick a different date, or you can type in these boxes and just type in a date yourself, and then re-summarize it, and it'll update all of these to see which stations do or don't have data in it. Once you check one of these stations, it'll go fetch it, preload it into the tool, and you'll notice it doesn't preload it into this part of the tool. What it does is it activates these last 2 sections of the wrap tool. This bullseye section, which is dedicated towards the assessment of water quality data, and the wavy lines, which is dedicated to the assessment of flow data. So if I go ahead and advance into that one, you'll notice the first step is it gives me a summary per selected station, right? I have a whole bunch of different stations selected. What data is available, right? So at the USGS sites, I don't really have a ton of water quality data because I only had data outside that period of record. So there's nothing in those 2 columns. For the EPA sites, you'll notice that there's a number of observations broken out by what kind of data set it is, right? Is it dissolved aluminum? Is it total aluminum? Is it calcium? Is it manganese? Dissolved manganese versus total manganese, and you'll identify all the chemical symbols in here. So you got uranium and zinc and all that. That same list is over here on the side if you want to look into it. So you could say, I want to look at these. Let's look at the dissolved aluminum has 59 total samples across all of my sites. It looks like some of the other sites have a few. If I pick my dissolved aluminum, it'll update this and it'll give me one more tab at the top here that gives me a statistics summary per station that has data, right? So you'll notice that I have the statistics of all my data. I have it per data set, and I'll have a nice little box plot down here of if everything, if just that one site. And you can look at the raw data itself, right? So I have a data series. I'll turn a few of these off just to give you an example of the interactivity. I have the data series for this particular monitoring site. I can also include the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. You can see how much fuller that graph gets. And you have that time series of dissolved aluminum data. You'll notice that not in addition to the time series, which again is interactive, you can hover over on one of these points. It'll highlight which data series it is, right? My blue dots, which are my 0026 station, versus if I wanted one of the orange triangles, that one's my 512 station. You can interact with this. You can drag on the map to zoom in. And then reset your zoom. So if I look over here where there's a lot of data squished in over here, I can zoom in on that and actually start seeing where those points land a little bit better. Again, you can download the raw form of this as an image if you want to save that graph somewhere, if you want to download it, the raw data behind the image. And you'll also have a summary table down here of the actual data from the data source, right? So at station 169, I had dissolved aluminum on January 12th, 2018 at 9:30 in the morning, and it had a value below the detection limit of 2.1. You can choose to include or exclude these from your data set, right? If I don't want it in my graph, I can change it and take it out of my graph. So you'll notice that little black dot, the first one over here, will turn off of that graph and disappear as I check or uncheck it. So you can look about including your data sets. If you want to just mess with the whole data set associated with these stations, you can click the download time series and you'll get a CSV file of everything, right? So it'll be all of these different constituents. If you want a different constituent, you can go in. If you want to look at E. coli data, if you want to look at temperature data, if you want to look at pH data, all of them are in here and you can look at all of the different categories of data. Similarly, for the flow data section, I'll go to that section of the tool. I'm just going to preload the ones that actually have flow data. Remember, only 2 of my stations had flow data. All the EPA ones did not. All the USGS ones did. Again, you're going to have a color-coded legend of which one's which. You can turn them off. It'll update to which one you want to look at. These, again, are interactive. So rather than looking at the entire period of record, if I want to go look at one particular year or zoom in on a particular snowmelt or over the summer, you can go in and you can get the daily data down here in an interactive fashion, or zoom back all the way out. Again, if you want to download it as an image. You can download the raw data set with it. This one has a second tab associated with it that'll plot the CDF curve for the discharge as well as an envelope graph. An envelope graph kind of gives you a typical condition as well as the last year on record. So you'll notice the dashed lines are the average for that day of the year, right? This graph goes from January 1st to December 31st. So if I took every single January 3rd sample and took an average of that, that would be January 3rd on this chart, right? 31 CFS is the average for the whole entire flow record for that site, or 22 for the black dashed line. It'll also graph the most recent year on record. So you have the solid blue line as the most recent year. So this year for the blue one, and this year for the black one. You can see how you've deviated from typical conditions. You also have your CDF curves, like I said. So these are non-exceedance probabilities, and then flow on the bottom on a logarithmic scale. That's why the tick marks are closer together and farther apart. If you want to download any of these, you can download the image, you can download the raw data set, but this is how you can interact with the time series data. And again, you can zoom in on any of these, right? If I want to see why we dipped around the first week of May on this river system, you can look into why you keep having that big dip in the otherwise increasing graph. Additionally, beyond water quality data, we have information on stream impairments, right? So if you go into the stream segmentation summary, if I pick that one, you'll notice I didn't have that one preloaded, so it's going to go load it for my area of interest. It's going to take me to the map. It's going to start a little spinner that it's going to go out and fetch my data summary. What this is going to go do is grab this segmentation layer from CDPHE for the state of Colorado for that area of interest, right? So these are all the different stream segments that exist within the watershed I picked. For those of you unfamiliar with the state's nomenclature, these are basically abbreviations for the basin they're in. So Colorado, South Platte, Cache-la-Poudre River, segment 14A. That's kind of how you dissect that. For that, you have descriptions associated with them, right? Is this one of the lakes? Is this one of the stream segments? And you also have a summary of what's going on. So, right, how many miles is it? Well, this one is a reservoir, so it's not going to have any miles. It's going to have acres instead, right? You can only be either a line or an area. It can't be both. And then it's going to have the designated uses for it, right? Is it designated for use for agricultural use, for aquatic life standards, for recreational water quality standards, for water supply standards? If you want to look at the impairment ones, you can switch your summary type. You'll notice with the stream segments, you get an additional drop down. You can pick which summary type you want. It's going to re-update both the map and it's going to re-update both the data set. And you'll see it gives you a different list. And this one's going to say, okay, 14A is impaired on the 303D list for total arsenic and mercury in fish, right? Versus 21A has no impairment and everything is attaining the last time it was assessed. So you can look at both the impairment summary as well as the purpose, the classifications and designated uses of those water bodies. You can also look for any segments that have TMDLs implemented on it. This is a smaller data set. There don't tend to be a lot of segments that have TMDLs. But you can toggle between which stream segment summary you want to look at. You'll notice at the top of the entire data set list is a button that says Generate a Watershed Management Plan. If you click that, what it's going to do is it's going to go fetch all the different data sets for your area of interest. It's going to render a Word document for your area. It's going to preload every one of those data sets. You'll notice that it's automatically toggling between these data sets that I have selected. It's taking a map image of that so it can export the map image for use in a report, right? So you have your land use, you have your stream segments, you have your population. All of those get saved as a PNG and then inserted into a Word document template that you have an end-to-end EPA 9-step watershed plan template. That template's been designed by CDPHE so they can help some of the watershed groups that are out there, some of the designated planning agencies like 208 groups fill in all the gaps for their area. And it gives them a starting point for a consistent layout and data sections. This tool does all the heavy lifting for go get my time series, go get my maps, right? If you were to go to each one of these individual agencies, it would take you most of a couple weeks to go get all of these data sets and crop them down to the area of interest for you. This does it in under 5 minutes, right? So this will keep running and it'll download that zip file that contains my nice little Word report